The text from my mother arrived while I was sitting in a meeting with my biggest client. I glanced at my phone, expecting another family group message I could safely ignore. Instead, I read one sentence that made my blood run cold. Your brother and his wife are moving into your house tomorrow. She's pregnant, and they need it more than you do. At first, I laughed because I thought it had to be a joke. Then I noticed the attached photo. My brother was already standing in my driveway with a moving truck, unlocking the front door like he owned the place. My parents had handed him keys to the house I had spent 12 years paying for. They somehow believed my name on the deed didn't matter if they declared it the family home. They had no idea I'd been preparing for betrayal far longer than they'd been planning it. And that mistake was about to cost them everything. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, what country are you watching from? I love seeing viewers from all around the world. Now, let's jump into today's story. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, and I own a small but successful digital marketing agency in Phoenix, Arizona. 12 years ago, when I was still a teenager, my grandfather left me enough money to buy a modest fixer-upper. I spent years renovating it, paying every tax bill, every repair, every insurance payment, until that little house became an $825,000 home. Every document, every mortgage record, every line of the title carried only one name, mine. My parents never celebrated that achievement. To them, nothing I owned truly belonged to me. If I bought something nice, they called it the family's. If I succeeded, they reminded me I should share because family always comes first. Then there was my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan had never held a steady job for longer than a year. Somehow, every unpaid bill, every failed business idea, every bad decision became my parents' emergency instead of his responsibility. They defended him so often that eventually he stopped believing consequences applied to him at all. So when my phone buzzed that Tuesday afternoon, I expected another request for money. Instead, I read a message that made my heart stop. Your brother's wife is pregnant. They're moving into your house tomorrow. I read the message 3 times before my brain accepted the words. There wasn't a question. There wasn't even a request. My mother had written it like she was announcing tomorrow's weather. I left my office immediately and drove home faster than I ever had before. The entire ride, I kept telling myself there had to be some misunderstanding. Maybe Ryan was storing furniture for a few days. Maybe my parents had exaggerated, like they always did. Then I turned onto my street. A U-Haul truck sat in my driveway. Ryan was carrying boxes into my garage while his pregnant wife, Melissa, stood on my front porch holding a set of keys. My mother was directing traffic like she owned the neighborhood, pointing at furniture and telling everyone where to place it. I slammed my car door. What exactly is happening? My mother smiled, as though I'd arrived to a surprise party. There you are. We were wondering when you'd get here. Ryan grinned without slowing down. Mom said you wouldn't mind. The baby needs more room. I looked at the couch disappearing through my front door, then back at them. My name is the only one on the title. My father actually laughed. Oh, Emily, he said. Paperwork doesn't matter when it's family. I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, and made one very calm call. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and leaned against my car without saying another word. My mother folded her arms with a satisfied smile. See, she said to Ryan. I told you she'd calm down. Ryan kept unloading boxes while Melissa carried a small lamp through my front door, looking slightly uncomfortable but saying nothing. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy pulled into the driveway. Right behind him came a black SUV. My attorney, Daniel Brooks, stepped out carrying a slim leather folder. The smiles disappeared almost instantly. Daniel greeted me first, then handed the deputy a certified copy of my property's ownership records. The title is solely in Miss Carter's name, he said evenly. No one else has ownership, residency rights, or permission to occupy this home. My father scoffed. That's ridiculous. We're her parents. The deputy remained calm. Sir, being related doesn't create legal ownership. Ryan finally stopped moving. What does that mean? It means, Daniel replied, that entering or remaining here without Emily's permission could legally be considered trespassing. For the first time all afternoon, no one laughed. Ryan slowly looked from my face to the deputy's badge. Only then did he realize this wasn't a family argument anymore. It was reality. The silence in my driveway felt strangely familiar. I had spent my entire childhood watching Ryan escape consequences while I was expected to fix the mess afterward. When I earned straight A's, my parents congratulated him for trying his best. When I worked weekends to save money, they borrowed it for one of Ryan's business ideas that never lasted more than a few months. Every sacrifice somehow belonged to me, while every second chance belonged to him. That pattern was exactly why I had never told them much about buying my house. They only learned after the paperwork was complete, the locks were changed, and every legal document listed me as the sole owner. I even kept a spare set of keys in a secure lockbox that only I could access. The keys Ryan held weren't mine. My mother had secretly kept an old construction key from years earlier, assuming it would always work. She never knew I'd replaced every lock after finishing the renovations. She stared at the new electronic deadbolt with confusion. Why doesn't that key work anymore? I looked her straight in the eyes. Because I stopped trusting people who believed my boundaries didn't matter years ago. No one had an answer for that. I took one slow breath before speaking. I'm giving everyone one opportunity to leave peacefully, I said. Pack everything back into the truck, hand me the keys, and we can end this without making today any harder. My mother threw her hands into the air. So, you're really choosing a house over your own family? No, I answered quietly. I'm choosing respect. Daniel stepped forward and explained that if they refused to leave after being formally instructed, the situation could become a civil and legal matter. His voice stayed calm, almost conversational, but every word landed heavily. Melissa looked at Ryan with growing confusion. You told me your parents said this house was ours. Ryan swallowed hard. That's what Mom and Dad told us. For the first time, he wasn't arguing with me. He was staring at them. My father tried to interrupt, insisting everyone had simply misunderstood. No, I said. You made a promise that was never yours to make. Melissa quietly wiped away tears. Ryan lowered his head, walked to the moving truck, and picked up the first box. Without another word, he carried it back outside. The decision had finally become his to make. For the next hour, the only sounds were cardboard boxes sliding across the driveway and the back door of the moving truck opening and closing. A few neighbors stepped onto their porches, pretending to water flowers or check the mail. No one said anything, but everyone understood enough to know this wasn't the happy family move-in my parents had imagined. When the last box disappeared into the truck, my mother turned toward me with tears of frustration. I hope you're happy, she snapped. You just destroyed this family. I shook my head. No. Boundaries didn't destroy this family. The belief that you could ignore mine did. Ryan walked over slowly, avoiding my eyes. I'm sorry, Emily, he said quietly. I should have asked you myself instead of believing what I was told. I nodded. I hope you and Melissa build a wonderful home for your baby. But it has to be one that's honestly yours. He gave a small, embarrassed smile before climbing into the truck. As they drove away, I locked my front door, not because I was afraid anymore, but because, for the first time, it truly felt like my home. 6 months later, I received an email from Ryan. It wasn't asking for money. It wasn't asking for another chance. It was simply an apology. He told me he had found a steady job, rented a small townhouse with Melissa, and finally understood what it felt like to build something through his own effort instead of expecting someone else to provide it. He admitted our parents had spent years convincing him that everything in the family automatically belonged to everyone. Losing my house had forced him to question that belief for the first time. Our parents never apologized. Instead, they kept telling relatives I had chosen property over family. The funny thing was, I never chose a house. I chose self-respect. That home represented years of sacrifice, long nights, impossible deadlines, and every dream I'd refused to give up on. Protecting it meant protecting the life I had built. Because real family never demands what you've earned. Real love respects boundaries. And the people who truly care about you will never ask you to surrender the very thing you worked so hard to call your own.